Howdy, folks. So it's late at night, and I thought I'd make a little rambly update video for you. I know it's been a while since I've updated you on the status of all the crap I've been working on. Most of it's either not terribly exciting or stuff I can't share with you. But there is some stuff I can talk about, and in particular, the updates that I've been doing to my server infrastructure. So about a week and a half ago, I updated, or more or less, I completely upgraded my file server Tesla and my workstation Volta. I basically, this machine was running 12.04 Ubuntu 12.04 LTS, and this machine was 14.04 LTS, and I basically blew away both of the installs. I have backups, of course, but I blew away the installs and I completely reinstalled with Ubuntu 16.04, the newest LTS. And this was sort of my way of, dealing with the, a support ending basically for those OSs. I need to sort of upgrade my configuration, and it allowed me to do things like use Canonical's bundled ZFS module, so I don't have to deal with the Open ZFS anymore, and it's got Systemd support, all the other kind of nice stuff. And I decided to do this server first because, of course, it's supposed to be the easy one. It's supposed to be the simple server. It's relatively few services, relatively basic config. And so what I did was I had this machine, which is just an old AMD quad-core machine, and I took this and I used it as a staging machine. So I would basically install the same OS, and then I took all the services that this thing would be running, and I put them on here. And I sort of wrote down how to configure everything, ensured that I knew how it was going to work and that it was going to work. And then I, sort of blew this all away and did everything at once, knowing exactly how it was going to work beforehand, so I could minimize the downtime, minimize the risk. And that worked actually pretty well. The only problem I really had during the install was MySQL. This thing has a MySQL, it's not actually MySQL, it's MariaDB, because screw Oracle, but it's basically the same thing. It's a MariaDB replication slave, so my app server, which is on Watt, replicates to this machine, and I could not get MySQL to start, for the love of God. And I eventually came to the conclusion that it was AppArmor was actually blocking the daemon from starting. It was the stupidest issue. So I eventually just disabled the AppArmor profile because I think it's retarded, and that got everything working. And I thought I was good. Everything seemed to be fine up until about almost a week after this thing was sort of all reinstalled and I'd sort of stopped playing with it. When, of course, my app server also has some VMs on it, and the virtual disk images for a lot of those VMs, not all of them, but a lot of them are actually stored on this machine, and they're simply exported over NFS. And anyway, I had all of the VMs that were exported over NFS, they all crashed. And I got them running again, and I noticed in their logs, they had all shown that the SATA controller that was exposed to the guest had effectively frozen. The link had frozen in attempts to reset it. Of course, it's a virtual driver, but Link's attempts to reset the link had failed, and eventually something completely went, and they just crashed completely. So I thought this was very odd, and what was even more odd was the fact that the actual host operating system showed no issues in the logs. The NFS server hadn't become unreachable or anything like that. So I was kind of puzzled as to what had actually happened. So I ended up just restarting everything, and lo and behold, no less than 2 days later, it happened again. A little bit different, but exact same thing. One of the servers had its file system mounted read-only. The other one went into an infinite loop and it just chugged away in an infinite loop, taking 100% of the CPU until I noticed and shut it down. But of course, it was dead. You couldn't even make a connection to it over SSH or anything. It had no file system. So obviously there is a problem with there's a problem with the NFS shares, and I'm not sure if the problem is NFS or if the problem is ZFS or if the problem is InfiniBand, because I still have that InfiniBand link, that IPIB link between the two machines. So there's a bunch of things that this could be, and it's not easy for me to isolate what the problem is, because of course the ZFS module I can't really change, because this is Ubuntu 16.04, which means that the ZFS on Linux project doesn't have packages for this version of the OS. And I can't upgrade the kernel to a new mainline version or downgrade the kernel to an older version, because the kernel module doesn't exist for those kernels. So I can't change the kernel version, which means I can't change the NFS kernel server version. So I've got problems there, and I can't really test ZFS very easily, and it's kind of a clusterfuck to try and figure this out. So I am doing some testing right now with another piece of hardware that I actually came across. This is another trash-picked motherboard that I found. This is an Asus M5A 8B-V or 88V. I'm not entirely sure if those are 8s or Bs, but anyway, this is a socket AM3 Plus motherboard. It's got an AMD FX 6100 hexa-core CPU at 3.3 gigahertz, I believe, and it has 8 gigabytes of DDR3 1333 memory on it. And so I picked this up out of the e-waste, and it works fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it, which is excellent. So I've just got this thing running with some junk power supply and an old SSD. And I've just installed Ubuntu 60.04 on this machine, and I've got this hooked up over Ethernet, and it's mounted to the shares on this machine. And basically what I'm doing is I want to see if I can sort of cause this fault, because if I can reproduce it, then it'll help me figure out what's actually going on. So what I've got going on right now, this monitor is actually this motherboard here. What I'm doing is I've got a VM, and it's basically just running Bonnie++ in an infinite loop to a VDI that I've put on Tesla, and I'm just basically just hammering that VDI with traffic, and with the hopes that something will happen. I have no idea if it's load related at all. In fact, I believe it probably isn't, because the VMs that are on that machine they're not I/O bound. They really don't do that much I/O at all. That's why I can get away with exporting their disks over NFS, because they don't really need the I/O. So I'm kind of at a loss as to what's going on. But I think the way I'm going to test this, if this fails to reproduce the issue, then that could give merit to the fact that maybe there is some sort of NFS incompatibility between the client and the server versions, because of course this is running Linux 4.4, and it's the same kernel as this server, whereas Watt, my app server, which is the one that actually has issues, it's running 3.13. Because I haven't touched it. So there could be some weird incompatibility between those that I just don't know about. And of course, if this has no issues, then it could give rise to that being the problem. Same time, this doesn't use InfiniBand. This is using gigabit Ethernet, so it could be something to do with the InfiniBand itself. It could be something to do with the fact that it's just when you exceed a certain bandwidth, this issue crops up. So the issue may still exist over Ethernet. I'll never be able to reproduce it. So that's still a variable I can't seem to really figure out how to isolate yet. I don't have another InfiniBand card to test with, unfortunately. I wish I did. The one thing I could do is I could actually switch the mounts on this server from InfiniBand to Ethernet, because it has both interfaces, and just see if it occurs on Ethernet that would be probably the first thing I'll do after the testing with this machine. And if that comes up inconclusive, what I can do is I can take the VDIs off of the ZFS file system in here and just put them on just a standard like 3.5-inch disk and put them in like a USB 3.0 disk caddy and plug it in and export a share with that. So basically I will have the same VDIs, but they'll be on a drive that's got ext3 or ext4 on it. And so I'll basically get ZFS out of the equation, and I'll be able to see if it's a problem with ZFS that's causing this. Because I think it's basically a hang where it's not able to flush buffers or read data fast enough to satisfy the guest operating system before it hits some sort of timeout. But I've set the timeout to be upwards of 2 minutes, and it still fails. So I mean, there's no way the I/O could be blocking on this thing for more than 2 minutes. I think that's insane. And the other thing that I'll mention, which I forgot to mention, is one of the times that this failed, I actually looked in my Monitrix graphs. I have Monitrix. It's a daemon that does just statistics gathering and graphing with a web UI. It's kind of nice. And I had that running on this machine. And I actually looked at the time where basically when the VMs stopped writing data to their VDIs. So that's obviously when the connection failed. And I actually noticed something pretty interesting. And I actually got a screenshot of it here, because these are RRDs. These are these logs rotate every day, so you don't have the data for too long. But this is just the system load graph of Tesla during that period of time. And the one thing that you'll notice is there's this band right here. And this band, there's no data here. So Monitrix did not log anything here. And I literally got out GIMP, and I actually measured how many pixels wide this was, and I calculated this is 5.5 minutes of missing data in the database. And all the graphs are missing data for that exact period of time. And the edge where that starts is where the VDIs disappear. Basically where the logs stop on the VDIs. So my thinking is that, well, whatever caused the NFS shares to shut themselves is also what caused this. But this is really, really odd, because, I mean, I don't know of anything that would stop all data collection altogether. And I mean, this scares me, because basically none of the machines that I have any recollection of the system being up for that period of time, and it doesn't have recollection of itself being up for that period of time. And I mean, it's not like it was just an I/O problem. I mean, if I blame ZFS, for example, and I say it's an I/O problem, then I would expect that a bunch of writes would queue up, and then they'd all flush once the disk came back online. So this data would still be populated, but it's not. So I don't know what happened. And this, to be honest, is even more of a freaky issue than the NFS problem, because this scares me. Whoops, knock something off my desk. This scares me because there's nothing in the logs. It's basically just there's a gap in all the logs during that period of time, and I can't explain it. So, I mean, I really don't know what to say, other than I've got to do more testing. But this is one of those issues that's so intermittent, it's so difficult to isolate, that I'm not even sure if I'll be able to. And I have a backup copy, but I really don't want to downgrade this thing back again, because that just defeats all the work I did. And I don't know. I mean, I'm actually debating just buying an SSD and moving all the VDIs into that machine, just getting another SSD for that, because it's already got 2 SSDs in it now. I'll just add another big one that can fit all the rest of the VDIs, and I'll just kind of band-aid the issue, get the VMs running, because they're down right now, and, you know, figure this out later. But I really don't want to do that. So, fuck, I hate updating. I mean, this is why people ask me, why aren't you running the latest version? Why aren't you running this version? And the reason is because shit like this. I mean, I upgrade all my shit every 4 years. And I do that because I want to reduce the amount of pain and suffering I have to go through as much as possible. Right? I could do it every 2 years, but that would double the amount of suffering, and I don't want to do that. And, you know, you're absolutely fucking crazy if you try to do this every 6 months with their non-LTS releases. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. So that's why I don't upgrade things that I don't need to upgrade. What needs to be upgraded? It is running 12.04, but it's like 1,000 times more complicated than the configuration of Tesla. Tesla is very simple. And that's why I chose to do it as one of the first machines. In fact, actually, it's not even really one of the first machines. I mean, it's kind of like halfway through. Watt is really the only big machine that I have left to go. And I mean, if a simple config like that has these weird issues that they're not even, it's not even a simple bug. It's not even like a normal bug that I can just Google and, you know, find somebody else who has the same problem, or even, you know, it'd be unique enough that I can actually Google it and get search results related to the problem I have. This is so ambiguous that there's really no resources to help me on this. And, you know, if a simple config can give me weird bugs like that, then who knows what that complicated config is going to give me in terms of bugs. So that's pretty much what I'm going to do following this problem. Is I'm going to get this machine, or maybe this machine, I don't know, this thing's a lot faster, and I'll just stage that machine completely. I'm going to try and basically clone it. And I may even do something weird by moving services over one by one. So I'll build the database on this machine, then I'll move the database over, and I'll actually run the production database on this machine, and I'll slowly move services over, and then this machine will become that machine, and I'll just maybe transfer the drive or something. I might actually end up doing something like that, because I don't think that, like, even if I took like a 3-day weekend, like a long weekend, and then I took an extra day off work, I still don't know if that would be enough time to do that all in one go. It's that complicated. So yeah, I'm not looking forward to doing that. Not at all. So if I eventually find the source of the problem, I'll make a little video about it just to give you closure. But realistically, if, you know, my past has taught me anything, it's that I probably will never actually find out what the cause of this problem is. In all fact, it's probably it's going to be something where I either find a way to make it occur less often, or I have to do a workaround, and I will probably never find out what the actual cause of this problem is. I've had many problems like this that you never actually isolate them. And it's really annoying because you spend so much time on it and you never even get closure. So anyway, so just to go over some other stuff, of course, I said I'd make another video on the restoration of this radio, and I got the parts in a long time ago, and I replaced them all. I replaced all the caps except for these few, which of course I've been told that they are mica, and I believe they actually are. They're labeled as they're labeled as paper, but I believe they're just mislabeled, and they are actually mica. So I didn't bother to change those yet. But anyway, I changed all the parts and powered it up, and it's working better. But unfortunately, the power consumption of this thing is like 60 watts almost, and it's rated only for 30. So that tells me something's very, very fucking wrong. So anyway, I measured the temperatures of everything. Of course, all the power's got to go somewhere. All the resistors and caps are all cool. All the tubes are normal except for these two, the 35Z5 and the 50L6. The 35Z5 rectifier I expect to be hot because, of course, it's drawing more power is going through it than normal, so it's going to get hot. But the 50L6 amplifier tube should not be getting that hot. So I looked at the output of this, and really the only thing that's on there is a resistor, a capacitor, and the audio output transformer. Resistor's fine, cap's fine. This thing is short. It's about 180 ohms, and it's supposed to be somewhere between 2 to 3K. So yeah, this thing's fucked. And I didn't know that before I started this, because I mean, I plugged this thing in and I got audio out of the speaker, and it was drawing the right amount of current at the beginning before I changed the caps. So I didn't even bother to check it. But as it turns out, obviously those caps were open, which was preventing it from drawing as much power as it normally would. So I just sort of, I missed it. And anyway, this thing costs more than the whole radio is pretty much worth. So I'm not going to be bothering to fix this further. It's not cost effective. This isn't a very nice radio. I want to move on to the other one, which is actually a much nicer radio. Now, I looked in my bin of transformers just to try, and I did find this, which has the right output impedance on the secondary, which is 3.4 ohms, which is what the speaker is. But the primary is only 550 ohms, so it's better, but it's still nowhere near good enough. One thing I might try, just as like a last-ditch effort, if I can find a resistor that's good enough, is I'll just put a resistor in, basically in series with the primary, and that will drop the DC resistance of that coil to, or it will increase it to what the tube expects, and it will work. It's just it'll be very quiet because most of the energy won't be magnetically coupled into the speaker, and instead it'll be dissipated as heat in the resistor. So I'll probably try that, and I'll make a little quick video about it if it works at all. But really, I want to spend more time working on the other radio, because this one is not really worth it. It's a parts unit basically at this point. So I've been rambling on for way too long at this point. So anyway, hopefully you found that interesting. Thanks for watching.